If you've got throbbing shins and can't work out, this video is for you. What's up YouTube? Cody Bidlow with SprintingWorkouts.com. Today we're going to be talking about a very common injury called shin splints or medial tibial stress syndrome, why it happens, and how you can avoid it. While you're here, hit a thumbs up, subscribe, and leave a comment. Help the algorithm out. Let's get into the video. So what are shin splints? Well, shin splints are a chronic overuse injury of the lower leg muscles, connective tissue, and bone tissue, typically referred to as medial tibial stress syndrome. The tibia is that big bone of your lower leg. Medial is on the inside. Stress syndrome, it all kind of makes sense. You know, you have pain along the inside edge of your shin, medial tibial, from too much stress, and over time it kind of builds up into being a bigger problem. Therefore, it's called medial tibial stress syndrome. What are the symptoms of shin splints? Well, most commonly, shin splints present as sharp or dull throbbing pain in the lower leg, which is aggravated by walking, running, jumping, or other types of activities similar to those. The pain is typically felt in the medial or inner part of the lower leg, especially present behind and along the shin. So this begs the question of, why do athletes get shin splints? Well, shin splints result from some combination of poorly progressed training, problems with running or jumping technique, and a lack of strength and tissue resilience in the foot and the lower leg. Improper shoe selection may also play a role, but I think that's going to be secondary to how we move, how we contact the ground, how much work we do, how well we recover, and those sorts of things. Shin splints tend to arise after athletes return from, a break in their training, such as they've been off during the summer and they come back for the fall, or times where training volumes are increased dramatically, or where the frequency of training and the frequency of intense training is also increased. Above all, poor ground contact qualities and chronically overloaded tissues, that's going to be the combination that really brings on shin splints, and if you can avoid that combination, you're going to be a lot better off. While medial tibial stress syndrome is a chronic overuse injury and a chronic overuse condition, my personal belief is that it's heavily influenced by how one's foot interacts with the ground when they run and jump. Shin splints are common in less experienced athletes who tend to have less skillful ground contact mechanics than more experienced athletes. Athletes that are spending too much time or overemphasizing being on their toes or on the front of their foot when they run, these are athletes who are more likely to get shin splints than people who are able to use the ground more effectively. Training loads that are too high or are progressed too soon can also have a big role in leading to shin splints. So it's this combination of how you hit the ground and how much training you're doing that is really going to combine to cause shin splints. Like I said before, when athletes are too toey when they jog, run, or jump, aka being too forefoot dominant in their movements, they put excess strain on the calf, posterior tibialis, anterior tibialis, peroneals, and the other muscles of the lower leg. Over time, these tissues become overworked and they aren't able to recover between sessions. They'll start to tighten up as a defense mechanism, and if this is let to continue, this is what's going to turn into shin splints, where you have a chronically inflamed, chronically pissed off group of muscles, tissues, and it's going to really inhibit your ability to run or jump. These athletes who are forefoot dominant tend to exhibit a ground contact where their foot is moving forward at impact, which generates large braking forces that the muscles of the lower legs then have to endure. Instead of approaching the ground with a dorsiflexed ankle and rolling from heel to toe when moving at slower velocities, or using the midfoot at medium velocities, and then leaving the forefoot to be the main point of contact at fast velocities. Instead of doing that, athletes who just smash forward with their toes into the ground every step, whether they're walking, jogging, or running, these athletes who are plantar flexed at contact are going to have chronically overloaded tissues of the lower leg, and these tissues are going to get pissed off, they're going to start to hurt, and you're going to get shin splints. Over time, the combination of bad mechanics and overloaded tissues leads to the chronic injury pattern we know as shin splints, or medial tibial stress syndrome. Your calves get swollen, it hurts to walk or jog, and any chance of performing at your peak and performing quality training is thrown out the window. Many athletes try to train through shin splints, I know I've done it in the past, only to see their performances deteriorate, their ability to train deteriorate, and the shin splints just get worse. Fortunately, there are ways to resolve and prevent shin splints, and that's what we're going to discuss next. So how do we go about resolving and preventing shin splints? Well, the main ways that I see about doing this is, first, we want to reduce or eliminate training volumes of exercises which aggravate the condition. So we want to remove the assault on the lower leg. We want to remove the things that are causing the issue to begin with. Then we want to introduce non-offending exercises and work on ground contact technique. Then we're going to progress to exercises that build strength and increase movement velocities at the same time in whatever exercises we are doing. And then eventually we'll be able to return to that level of performance where we were at before the shin splints started. So let's talk about reducing or eliminating training volumes of exercises which aggravate the condition. This means you need to stop running, jumping, and doing other high-impact forms of training when you have shin splints. You can temporarily replace running with something like a stationary bike workout to maintain your aerobic or anaerobic qualities that are typically targeted through running. So say you're a sprinter, but you can't sprint because your shins hurt. Well, you could do 6-second sprints on the bike with maybe 3 minutes in between, where you're going as fast as you can at a pretty high resistance level. You're going to get similar biochemical reactions in the body, get up to really high frequencies of movement, so you're able to maintain some qualities and work on things that are relevant to sprinting in a non-sprinting manner. If you're a runner, you could do the same thing. If you're a jumper, you could do the same thing. But the idea is we want to replace the things that are causing the shin splints to stick around and continue to be a problem. We want to remove those and replace that work with something that does not aggravate it, like a stationary bike workout. By removing the chronic stressors, we can get the body to calm down, reduce inflammation, and reduce pain. It would be wise to ingest anti-inflammatory foods and supplements during this time, maybe some leafy greens, some mushrooms. You could try a supplement like curcumin, but you want to eliminate things that are going to enhance inflammation, so you probably want to lower your sugar intake, and minimize alcohol consumption, make sure you're getting a lot of good sleep, really high quality sleep. All of these things are going to play a role in helping get your body to calm down a little bit and then get you to where you're able to actually work on improving your shin splints as opposed to just perpetuating the issue. We want to replace aggravating activities with something that does not bother the shins very much, such as using, like I said, a stationary bike to replicate running workouts, using body weight circuits, med ball circuits to work on general strength and fitness, those sorts of things. Next up, we want to introduce non-offending exercises and work on ground contact technique. So once you feel you can walk without any kind of serious pain, it would be wise to introduce activities that can help bring you closer to being able to run again, while also being diligent to correct technique issues which led to the shin splints in the first place. So athletes can use dribbles to progress back from stationary biking towards something that is similar to running, while also minimizing impact and working on proper ground contact mechanics. When we dribble, we dorsiflex the foot. We lead with a heel to toe rolling type of ground contact. The velocities are similar to walking or jogging most of the time until you get really good at them and start to progress them to more intense variations. But if you're recovering from shin splints and you're introducing dribbles into your training, you'll be doing dribbles at maybe a walking or a jogging pace, really focusing on dorsiflexing, heel first, rolling through that foot. And this is going to help make sure that the foot is pliable, make sure that you can access that dorsiflexion range of motion. It's going to help stretch the tissues of the foot, the ankle, and the lower leg. And this is going to help eventually lead to you improving your shin splints, as long as these are introduced once you don't have a whole lot of pain when walking or doing maybe some light jogging. If you were to do these right away when your shin splints are at like a peak, level of pain, it might not help as much. But if you take a few days off from running, let that pain subside, and then you start doing dribbles, this is a good way to progress back toward running, so long as that pain level is not, very high. In this manner, dribbles can help teach the athlete how to properly contact the ground when they run, while also strengthening and conditioning the muscles of the foot and the lower leg. When you do dribbles, you'll feel a big leg pump. You'll feel that you're getting a lot of work in those lower leg muscles and the muscles of the foot. So this is not only going to help teach you how to contact the ground better, it's not only going to help reduce impact, say, compared to doing running, but it's also going to help strengthen your body so you can then handle running better once you reintroduce it. If you can't dribble without pain, try doing a high squat walk. In my personal experience, improving flexibility of the feet, calves, and hamstrings tends to take pressure off the afflicted area and reduce pain overall. So you might find that your hamstrings and calves are really tight when you have shin splints. So we want to target the body sort of systemically and hit different areas that are going to help eliminate pain in the shins, but you may not always have to just target the shins. You may also have to work on the hamstrings or the glutes or the feet, work around the area that's bothered, not only just focusing on the, troublesome area. Next, we want to progress exercises to build strength and increase movement velocity. So with any injury, The ultimate goal of rehab is to return to play and then to return to a level of peak performance that we had before the injury. So to do this, we must bridge the gap between where we are now and where we need to be. And we can do this by progressing through exercises, ranges of motion, velocities, and move all those qualities and variables in the direction of what we're seeking. So if we want to return to running, we need to progress from walking and jogging pace drills such as dribbles to exercises that are performed at higher velocities. So you might go from a walking A march to an A skip that is performed at a faster velocity. You might go from ankle dribbles at a walking pace to ankle dribbles at a jogging or running pace. You might go from ankle to calf dribbles. We want to progress in the direction of where we need to go, such as by moving faster, moving through a larger range of motion, and increasing the impact. But these progressions need to happen, as the body is having less pain. If you still have a lot of pain, don't progress yet. But once the pain starts to go away and your range of motion improves, that's a sign that you can start to progress things slightly, slowly, but surely. Foot and ankle strength also needs to be worked on by athletes returning from shin splints. So athletes can use bands, ankle weights, cables, and other types of implements to strengthen the foot, the ankle, and the lower leg. Athletes should perform exercises that include dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, inversion and eversion of the foot, internal and external rotation of the lower leg, and also use exercises that target the intrinsic muscles of the foot. For example, you could grab a band with your toes and try to pull that band along the long axis of the foot. You could have a band coming from up top and pull those toes down. Find different ways to create resistance in different movements of the foot as well as in the lower leg, and these will help progress you back toward being able to run and jump and all that stuff by strengthening these little muscles that likely got overworked before when you got shin splints. The final goal of your rehab is to return to a level of peak performance. So once some basic progressions have been performed and pain is still not an issue, athletes need to continue to progress back to their primary sport activity. So if you're a sprinter, this means you need to progress back to sprinting. At first, they could do things like sprinting in flats or running shoes on grass, with a primary emphasis being put on having good quality ground contacts, making sure that they're bringing the foot down with dorsiflexion, making sure the leg is coming down and back to the ground, not crashing forward into the ground. Athletes in this phase need to be disciplined with their dorsiflexion mechanics and make sure that every time they sprint and every time they do a drill that they're putting their foot down or down and back, not in front of them, not stabbing forward into the ground, reaching with their toes. If you spend all this time getting the pain to go away, but then right when you go back into your drills or you're sprinting, you're doing this overly toe-y type of movement, what do you expect to happen? You're just going to get shin splints again. So you need to make sure that you're really disciplined with how you move, and you're probably going to have to film yourself, because what feels normal to you if you have shin splints is probably not a very good movement pattern. The reason you got shin splints is because you were moving poorly or you were overloading your training. But let's say it was because you're moving poorly. Well, your baseline of movement of what feels good is not correct. So you have to be able to modify that, and one of the ways to do that is to film yourself while you do drills and while you sprint and see, does what I feel is how I feel shown in the video. If you feel like you're dorsiflexing but you look at the video and you're not, well, you need to dorsiflex to even a more extreme degree until that becomes your new normal. So if you really want to return to performing at a high level, you have to be extremely disciplined with how you move and making sure that you're constantly monitoring how did that look, how did that feel, and bridging the gap between what you think is happening and what needs to happen. It's important that during this period of returning to performance that athletes do not implement running volumes that are extreme, and care should be taken to avoid going back to the workloads which were present when the shin splints became an issue. For example, if you were sprinting 500 meters worth of volume in your sessions when the shin splints popped up, you probably need to drop it down to maybe 200 meters, or do a little bit of sprinting and then go for plan B activities like biking or dribbling, so you can still get a good metabolic stimulus, still get a good workout in, but not have the shin splints reoccur. Eventually, with sane progressions, disciplined technique, and progressing toward being able to handle more volume, athletes will be able to increase the overall volume in their program, but it has to happen in increments. It can't just go, 1 week you're at 200 meters of sprinting one day, and then the next week you're going 500. You have to progress in a sane, manner. It's important that you be aware of the signs of shin splints returning. So if you're out at practice and all of a sudden your shins start throbbing, or you go home and they're throbbing, or you wake up in the morning and they're sore, that's a sign that either your mechanics, your workload progression, or a combination of both is causing problems. And these signs need to be really paid attention to, and you got to cut it off right when you sense that pain is coming back. You got to go in and find a way to interrupt that process so you don't come back to having shin splints once again. You may have to reframe in your mind how much work you think is enough, and you may never actually be able to utilize the volumes that you want to in your training. Just because we tell ourselves that we need X amount of sprinting or running in our program does not mean that that's the objective truth. There's many ways that people fool themselves in this world, now more than ever, and one of the ways that we can do that is by convincing ourselves that we need this amount of work in order to improve, when that may be completely incorrect. And preconceived notions about workloads can be the downfall of many great athletes. So don't have preconceived notions about how much training you need to perform. Instead, listen to your body and let your body tell you how much it can handle, and go based off of that, not what some book says, not what some guy on YouTube says, not what some coach at some random school says. You need to go based on what your body is telling you you're able to do, and then progress that. So in conclusion, to wrap things up, here's a recap of how I think we can deal with shin splints. First, we want to reduce or eliminate training volumes of exercises which aggravate the condition. This means we need to stop running and jumping, but still do things like maybe lifting weights or using a stationary bike if those things do not aggravate the condition. We want to maintain training volumes as much as possible, but completely eliminate the things that are causing the problem, and then slowly replace that with activities that allow you to move similar to that main activity, but without causing pain. Next, we want to introduce non-offending exercises and work on ground contact technique. We need to maintain training, but do so by utilizing exercises that do not aggravate the shin splints, while also helping us to prevent the issue in the first place. This is where walking and jogging paced drills can be useful if you're not able to run. Care should be taken to emphasize proper ground contact technique, like we've talked about. Avoid being forefoot dominant, and make sure that you have good ankle dorsiflexion range of motion, both passively, actively, and both in more, while you're sitting down and doing it, as well as when you're sprinting, jumping, and doing other types of dynamic activities. Eventually, we'll want to progress exercise velocity, range of motion, and complexity, while also using exercises that strengthen the foot and the lower leg. The enhanced strength and motor control that comes from doing these basic strength exercises will help prevent shin splints in the future, so long as workloads and ground contact mechanics are kept in a good place. Once you feel that you're progressing well and the pain is not returning, you can finally progress back to sprinting, jumping, or running fast. If the pain begins to return, assess your movement technique, your ground contact mechanics, and reconsider how much training volume or training frequency you can handle. Maybe you can handle the volume, but you need an extra day to recover between sessions. Or maybe you can't handle as much volume in one session, but you can split that up over more days, training more frequently. You have to find what works for you, and what works for you may be very different from what works for me. That's why we have to pay attention to what our body tells us and listen to that, rather than listening to external sources of information. Obviously there's things that we can learn. You can learn things from my videos, you can learn things from coaches out there, but you have to ultimately learn from what your body tells you. And ultimately, shin splints can be resolved, but only if care is taken to eliminate the causal factors, improve the things that are leading to having shin splints, and then from there, not repeating the same mistakes of having too much volume, too much frequency, or poor ground contact mechanics. So guys, hopefully you got something out of this. Hopefully you have a better understanding of what shin splints are, why they happen to us as sprinters, jumpers, runners, and all that, and ways that you can come out of shin splints and end up having, a good quality performance once you're out of that pit of pain, so to speak. But that's all I got for you guys today, so make sure to check below for links. I got programs, video review, consultations, all that stuff. There's also some products down there you can check out. But other than that, I will talk to you guys later. This is Cody Bidlow with SprintingWorkouts.com, signing off.